Good morning and welcome to our latest Posturite webinar. And today we're going to be talking about DSE and hybrid working, the easy way to stay healthy and compliant. I'd like to just let you know that we will be recording this session. So if you have any technical problems or you want to share this with colleagues, you can come to our website and get the recording. Also, we'll be emailing you a copy of the recording after today. We are able to do some Q&A at the end of this session, so please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. You can also put them in chat, but it's easier for me if you pop them in the Q&A because then I can get that first, and I'm not very technically minded, so making life easy for me is always good. So I think the most important thing to sort of some of you don't know Posturite, so I just want to say a few words about Posturite. I mean, our mission at Posturite is very much to create happier, healthier, and more active workspaces. And that's actually no matter where people are working, both at home, in the office, or on the go. We have teams of people over the UK and Ireland giving expert advice, providing assessments, and doing training. We've been around for about 30 years, and I've actually been working for Posturite for 18. I know I don't look old enough, but that's the way it is. Did you know that at last year, customers bought over 49,000 chairs from us and 28,500 ergonomic mice? So we've been quite busy. Very pertinent today, we also carry out and support over 10,000 assessments. And, you know, it is good to be busy, but also we find it very rewarding supporting people working from where they are. And as an ergonomist, you know, I'm very proud that we have a diverse team of sports scientists, physios, and ergonomists working with us. So we've been really busy, and we've been really busy doing hybrid. So, I mean, I think it's really exciting to be here today. So I am joined actually today by Ryan Church. So I want to introduce you a little bit to Ryan. Ryan and I have worked together, as you can see, for some time because he used to work for Posturite. He worked for Posturite from 2006. And we worked together particularly on software and things like that. So when it became apparent that our software really needed more technical support, you know, Ryan moved over to Ideagen, who sort of carried this forwards. So I think, unless I've missed anything particular about you, Ryan, that you want to say, I think perhaps we ought to tell people a little bit about our journey. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, then let's sort of, why are we here? What about our journey to this supporting people, no matter where they're working? Well, Ryan and I have worked together since 2006. We realised that we needed to create some training and assessment for people to make it efficient for assessors and for companies, and also make it very accessible. And we had a package. I think the initial package was just Assessrite, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And it did that very effectively. And quite early on, we started getting requests saying, well, people don't always work in the office. How do we support people in other places? And we started to develop a new sort of training and assessment course, which we called Agile. And that was all good even more, wasn't it?
Yep. Started putting that together 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. So we were on that path. And, you know, this thing, you know, has become far more widespread now. It's not the exception. I would say more people than ever work in the office, at home, on the move. And where Ideagen has really taken this sort of, I don't know, it wasn't a basic package. We worked very hard on it, but I think it's made it far more interesting and far more flexible to support these hybrid workers. And that's really what I wanted Ryan to talk to us today. So Ryan, forgive me if I've forgotten various bits on there, but I'll probably hand over to you now to sort of show where we are now with this course.
Well, thank you, Catherine, and good morning, everybody. As you say, Catherine, we worked together for too many years to mention. And in that time, WorkRite has been completely grounded in the world of ergonomics. That is our foundation. That is always been our go-to market from a software perspective. The Assessrite course that you mentioned is something that when I came into the business in 2006 was in its first iteration. We quickly went to I think AssessRite 2.0, we called it quite elaborately. And then unsurprisingly, we went to AssessRite 3.0, but all of those were office-based ergonomic DSE training and assessment courses. As you mentioned, we did sort of evolve into, or we recognized in, I'm going to forget the year now, it was 4 or 5 years ago that the world was moving into a not purely office-based, not purely home working based. Some people were working on the move, a real variety of situations. We called that Agile. At the time, we called that Agile. We still call it Agile DSE is what the latest iteration is, and that's what we're here to talk about today. But the evolution has all been built around the foundations of the training, test, and then an appropriate assessment, that self-assessment that an individual takes, and what the workflows are behind that assessment as well. So we are here today to talk about the front end, the user experience, what direction they take before completing that self-assessment. But it's fundamental to understand that it's the WorkRite platform that sits behind it that drives the automations. It identifies if somebody has an issue at their workstation and either guides the end user how to self-resolve it, or it identifies or triggers an action for maybe a DSE assessor, or something more severe may go to a physio or a health and safety manager. So that's the driving tool behind the course we have today. But so before I take you through the Agile DSE course and what it includes, I just wanted to expand a little on what Catherine was saying to reaffirm the progress that we as a team have been able to make since being acquired by Ideagen. As I say, today is primarily about the Agile DSE course, which is ideally placed for hybrid working. Incidentally, before COVID hit, WorkRite Agile, as we called it previously, was the first iteration of this Agile course we have today. It was perfectly placed when employers were finding that they had staff that obviously had to be working from home. We're in a lockdown. Our existing customers made great use of the WorkRite Agile course. New customers were very keen to get their hands on it quite quickly so that they could utilize it for their home workers in a situation which was, I hate the word, but it was unprecedented. But yeah, so what Ideagen have been able to let us do is grow at a quicker rate, still very much associated with Posturite. I'm in the Posturite office today. It feels like I've come home because I spent so many years working here. That sort of input of technical, moving to a technical company as opposed to working for an ergonomic company has enabled us to go from delivering 3 or 4 new courses a year, and we're now ramping up to nearly 30 courses a year. So like I say, today is about Agile DSE, but just to give some context around the relationship and how that continues to evolve between the two businesses, it hopefully sort of shares the journey that we're on as well. So what I'll do now, actually, Catherine, have you got the results of the poll there? I don't have them in front of me.
Well, I don't actually. So no, we will wait. I will try and get those. I told you I wasn't very technical. You've known that for years, actually. I will get those, and I will come back to you with those in a minute.
No problem. Well, there we go. They've just popped up. Thank you, Tom. So the question was, how confident are you that your hybrid workers are adequately supported? We gave you some very sort of specific numbers: 100%, 75%, 50%, and don't want to answer. I'm quite surprised actually. 75% has come out with the 51%, so just over half the score. Next is 50%. There is 9% of the people on the call they're 100% confident that the hybrid workers are supported. So that's reassuring. I mean, there's 13% that don't want to answer. So we'll probably need to speak to. Well, feel free to speak to either Catherine or I after the call. But yeah, this is what this session is all about: is to help with those people.
Do you know, that's quite encouraging actually, because people have been on such a sharp learning curve, and there have been so many difficulties and different procedural things to overcome to try and support people in different ways. I think we should all give ourselves a little bit of encouragement that people are making such good progress. So I take that quite positively actually. So,
absolutely, yeah. I wasn't expecting such positive results, to be brutally honest. But we've got a captive audience here, so people that are interested in hybrid working are hopefully on the call. So yeah, okay. So I thought the most appropriate way to get across what the course does is to show you sort of elements of the course. It's not going to be a live demonstration of the product. This is, as you can see, it's a slide deck, but I've lifted the animations from each of the appropriate sections just to get across how the course delivers itself and how we engage end users. So I'm going to go quiet for we're both going to go quiet for a minute or two and allow the next animation to play. This is the introduction module at the beginning of the course.
With the rise of the internet and portable technology, office life has become more flexible than ever, and you are increasingly able to choose where and when you do your work. Whether you predominantly work away from the office or you simply answer the occasional email on the train, it's likely that this agile way of working has affected you in some way. It's important that you know how to benefit from agile working and that you limit practices that could be detrimental to your health and productivity. Poor short-term decisions can increase your risk of discomfort, stress, and inefficiency. Understanding your choices and making suitable decisions can help you to remain healthy and productive. During this course, you'll explore some of the different environments you might work in, the equipment you may use, and see how these can benefit your working life. Depending on your working environment, you may need to pass a test and complete a DSE assessment at the end of the course. If you're not sure about how to interact with any screen in the course, select the Help button on the left, and our context-sensitive help will show you what you need to know.
So there you go. That's the introduction module, the beginning of the course, and that, as I said, I've said to too many occasions, it explains what the course does infinitely better than I ever could. But how does the course help with covering your duty of care, and what is the duty of care for employees working from home? It's effectively the same, whichever environment you're working in. And what I've got here is a table of how this course and the WorkRite platform that sits behind it is going to enable you to meet each of the requirements. So does it identify users? The WorkRite system will identify users based on the provision of the data from a customer. Clearly, it trains users and it provides health and safety information. I mentioned at the start how assessing workstations. All of our each evolution of the e-learning courses we provided, all the way through from AssessRite version 1 through to today's Agile DSE, all are powered by the assessment engine, which is a self-assessment that's carried out by the individual, but the assessment's only completed once the individual's been through the training, they've passed the test to prove they're an appropriate self-assessor, they then carry out their self-assessment. So going back to the requirements here, does it assess a workstation? It does, and it triggers the actions appropriately. It reduces or eliminates risk, yes, through identifying risks, which must then be managed. So what that means there is, if you identify that someone's often got pain at their workstation, it's probably best not to leave that for too long, because you've identified the issue. You then have the triage process afterwards to ensure that issue is resolved. It can't plan a user's workload, but it can give automated guidance. It can't provide a suitable equipment. Clearly, it's a software tool, but again, it can identify what is needed and can create triggers for the appropriate people to be either purchasing or providing the appropriate equipment. It advises users of free eye tests, so it's advised of company policy, and then it's got appropriate reporting systems, which incidentally, reporting tools in WorkRite have evolved significantly over the years. And they're all inbuilt as well, so it's something that are appropriate to the way we deliver courses, and the assessment analysis tools are really quite convenient. And reassessment. So if a workstation needs reassessing based on the length of time since the last assessment, or the person may have moved, so the automatic trigger from Active Directory or wherever your user data is being provided from, the system can recognize that somebody has moved groups, and there can be an automatic trigger to identify the individual based on them having moved desk, needs to reassess as well. So that's just covering the duty of care aspect. All the things you'd expect in the course, things for setting up your workstation. It covers getting ready to work, workstation setup, setting up your chair, desk space, obstructions, screen position, and multi-screens, identifying the equipment that's used. Everything I've mentioned there, and there's one of the looping animations there that sits in the course as well. It's not always the most. It can be quite dry getting this content across to customers. Sorry, getting the content across to users. So what we've tried to do is ensure that our animations are bright, they're informative, and they really do bring to life what you need to do and the things to look out for. Again, I'm going to go quiet here. I won't take my video off this time because that clearly paused the video that I'm showing you. But I will put myself on mute whilst I play this animation on how to set up a workstation.
Let's take a look at how to get the best workstation set up for your well-being. When adjusting your chair, the primary objective is to be in the correct position in relation to your keyboard, ensuring your forearms remain horizontal and level when just above the keyboard. If when at the right height for the keyboard, your feet do not touch the ground or your knees are above the level of your hips, you should make adjustments, such as using a footrest or a suitable alternative, such as a box, or raising your desk if possible. If your chair isn't adjustable, try using cushions to adjust your sitting height. Sit back in the chair fairly upright with your back against the backrest so the small of your back is supported. There should be a small gap around 2 to 3 inches between the edge of your seat and the back of your knees to allow for adequate support. If you have armrests on your chair, make sure they don't restrict your position and that there is enough space for your arms to float above them when typing and rest on them when not. Otherwise, you may want to remove the armrests. If your desk is also adjustable, alter the height of it to ensure your forearms remain horizontal and level when just above the keyboard. If your desk has a fixed height, adjust your seating height as described. If your seat depth can't be adjusted and doesn't fit you, or after all the adjustments you've made, your feet are flat on the ground but your knees are above the level of your hips, you may need help to adjust your desk and chair. You should speak with a relevant person in your organisation about getting set up correctly.
Okay, so that's the workstation. We then include in the course, it's not just about DSE, we include relatively high-level aspects of well-being and stress awareness. The course explains that stress is a normal physical response to any situation perceived as threatening. It then explains, or then goes into a little more detail and highlights the 6 key areas, the HSE's management standards for work-related stress, and it gives 6 practical suggestions. Sorry, it's not 6. It gives multiple practical suggestions of how to take steps to help if you feel you are not coping very well. What we then have is the capacity later in the course. You can maybe want to add an assessment question related to maybe mental health or well-being or some form of stress awareness course. That could then trigger the user to see a more detailed course specifically on that or any other title. So, but we wanted to include in the Agile DSE course a real sort of encompassing of everything around the way the person works rather than just around their desk. Other things you'd expect to see in a course like this, just so for clarity, these things are obviously in there: lighting, temperature, space, humidity, and noise. It wouldn't be a DSE course if they weren't included, but it covers some other risks as well. So slips, trips and falls, trailing wires and bags, manual handling, working at heights, electrical appliances and reporting defects. So you've got a broad, all-encompassing course that is covering the key points, but it's not leaving out some of the peripheral elements as well. So how does this relate to different ways of working? I've got 3 more animations now. They are just a minute each, but I think, again, it really does sort of explain how the course relates to the individual. And I should have mentioned before that the individual may not go through all of these environments. They will be self-allocating, so effectively gamification and self-routing themselves in the course. If they work in the office, they would see the office environment. If they work at home, they'll see the home environment. If they work on the go, they'll see on the go. If they see all 3, they're going to see the whole content. So let me go quiet again now for the office environment introduction.
The office where we work has a few different spaces to work in. You may not have access to all these types of spaces. However, it's important to know how to choose the right setup for the right task. The hot desk environment offers a high degree of flexibility with different areas available to use for different tasks. Keep yourself healthy, safe and productive by assessing the type of hot desking workstations available to you and choosing suitable tasks to complete in the different areas. Soft seating and breakout areas are great for informal meetings where you won't need to take notes or when you have time to catch up on some industry reading. Meeting rooms are best for more formal meetings where attendees are likely to need their laptops, notepads and other equipment. They're also perfect for meetings in which 1 or more participants are dialing in or for when you're calling a colleague or customer.
Okay, so that's the office environment. We then move on to the home working environment. Again, if an individual works at home, they're going to see this. If they don't, they wouldn't see this content, and it is expanded further in the course. These are just the introductions.
One of the great things about working at home is that I avoid the stress and cost of travelling during peak periods. It's easier to work at home when I want to concentrate without any of the typical office distractions, and it's great for making confidential or sensitive calls in private. There are some disadvantages in working at home too. It can be difficult to concentrate with my family around me while I'm trying to work, so sometimes I use headphones or go into another room. It's tempting to constantly check work-related communications or be available even during breaks, so I switch equipment to silent and put it to one side. When I finish work, I turn it off completely. Working from home for long periods started to make me feel a bit isolated from work and colleagues, so I had a chat with my manager and built activities into my day to make sure I don't lose motivation or feel stressed from being isolated.
Okay, and the final animation I wanted to take you through today is the on-the-go section. Should give you some context here. Again, going back to WorkRite Agile, the initial or the pre-runner of this particular course was created before the term hybrid working was in the world, and hybrid working policies were actually even being talked about. Again, going back to what I was saying to Catherine was saying earlier, we recognise that people work in all these different environments. It still has context in our opinion, because people are working on trains on the move. So here's the final animation, and we'll take questions after this is finished.
If, like me, you are working on the go, you are one of a growing number of people who work in a variety of environments rather than in one place. We rely more on portable equipment and different workstation setups, which offer greater flexibility but can have posture and security implications. It's important to understand the implications of these factors and find out how to stay healthy and productive when working in different environments. Let's look at some of the advantages to agile working practices. Having more options and greater control over what I do and where allows me more flexibility to enjoy a better work-life balance. Some days it suits me to start early and go into the office to use the company's hot desks. Then I can leave earlier, avoid peak travel, and fit in a gym or swim session before going home and spending time with my family. I have monthly meetings at head office and try to meet each of my managers weekly. I use the train whenever I can, and I have learnt the hard way to think about how much equipment I carry. It's great that every day of my week can be different, but it does mean I spend a lot of time working in places where I have to improvise to make sure I can maintain good posture and set up my equipment safely.
So there we go. That's the full introduction animations for each of the sections in the course. I can see we've got quite a lot of responses in the chat, Catherine, and a couple of questions in the Q&A. Have you been able to digest those whilst we've been watching that animation?
Yes. I've actually multitasking-ish, sort of. Just what you wanted to sort of put one thing forwards, I think, really, to sort of start off. DSE assessments. I mean, I have been doing them ever since the regulations came out, which is over 30 years ago. And one thing, I mean, I'm always surprised at is people, how do people manage with a large workforce who don't have an automated system? Because, paper-based assessments are so hard to keep track of, and so, I mean, it's quite interesting. And I think we should be focusing our time on supporting people who have problems. And I think these sorts of software packages really help to allow us to focus our attention where it's needed, not doing sort of repetitive tasks. So that's my penny's worth in, I suppose. However, I always think that a one-to-one assessment, if there's a problem, has got to be the way to go. Questions. Linda was asking, how do we address a person's use of several work environments? She's saying that they ask for a full assessment when they spend most of the time, and then a quick check using a checklist for temporary work. Could you just go over perhaps how people could make sure that they assess the right level of assessment for their different workstations?
It's a really interesting question, because by giving the end user the ability to make a decision as to which route they go down, you need to empower them with the information they need to make the right decision. So I haven't got the screen with me, but there's a point at which an individual will choose on the go, home or office. And the wording on that screen as to how to direct the individual is really, really important, because if your policy is that you want people to assess every single workstation they work in, you need to make that clear to the end user at the point they're making that decision, because we have designed the course so that there are 3 different routes through the same course. So in Agile DSE, the individual will be asked to probably go through their primary workstation first, and then you can ensure at the end of the training to say, if you work in another workstation, ensure you go through on the go or home, maybe at a later time, because there's the principles of an appropriate workstation, as we know, Catherine, are the same. I mean, make the best of what you got is something that I remember you've said in the past, but you can do that for so long. But if you know somebody's working on the go for a decent chunk of time, they're going to need different equipment than if somebody's working at home all the time or in the office. So we empowering the end user to make the right decisions within the course is the way I would answer that question.
No, I think very much so. The other thing I really like about it is that if it changes, that resource is always available to you. So if you found that you've been going into the office most of the time, but actually then find spending more time at home, you can go back into the course and redo it. So I think it does give quite a lot of flexibility long term.
Absolutely.
Which it's always going to be changing as you change job roles and that sort of thing. I've got a little question here from Barbara, who was talking about do we still advocate a fairly upright position than a health recline with a lumbar support? I think probably I'll take that one. Shall I, Ryan? Would you like me to take that one? I mean, yes. I mean, I suppose I'm what I would advocate is that somebody always has to recline into their backrest, or else the backrest is there to take some of the pressure off the back. If you're not leaning against it, it cannot do the weight transfer. So it's really important to have a lean against the backrest, and you should have lumbar support to keep the spinal curve. However, if you lean too far back, sometimes you can lose a lumbar support, but also it has a detrimental effect on the neck. It's really important the head stays on the neck. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question right, Barbara, in the fact, yes, you need to have some recline with lumbar curve, but not too much recline, because then that has a negative effect on the neck. So I hope that makes some sort of sense to you. Level, next question. They've asked whether the animations will be available. I mean, obviously they'll be part of the recording, but if anyone wanted to show them to colleagues, is there a way of coming to you, Ryan, or Ideagen and asking for some samples?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the link that was shown on that previous screen, which I've just stopped sharing, but it'll be in the recording clearly. If you go to that link, you're able to request trial access of any of the courses. So you can see not just the Agile DSE course, but you can see the rest of the suite as well. And within that trial access, you'll be able to go through as many times as you need to see the courses and all the animations as well.
Okay. Thank you. Angela's asking what approach would we recommend to DSE assessment and safe working within a hot desking environment where workstations may change on a regular basis? Shall I start off on that one?
Catherine,
you want me to start off on that? For me, although I think it does fit in, I'm very much a believer, setting up a workstation probably only takes about a minute or two if you know how the equipment works. So I would expect everybody to sit at a workstation, adjust their chair to the right height, adjust their screens to the right position, bring the keyboard and mouse to bear. So once they know what position they're trying to get to, they should be able to adjust any flexible workstation to be able to suit their needs. But this is where training comes into it, in the fact it's really, really important that you have the right training for the equipment that people use. And if I remember rightly, Ryan, you can actually bespoke the documents and information and links within the package, so you can actually put the relevant information for your equipment into the package, can't you?
That's absolutely right, and it ties in nicely to another question I've got here, which is, can someone go back and add view an additional module if they didn't tick it in the first place? So yes, so if they're sat in a hot desk today and they hadn't sat in a hot desk before, they can go back and do the office environment, which includes hot desking. So, but yeah, they can, what you just referenced there, Catherine, is modifying the content to fit with company policies, procedures. That, I mean, that's vital. This isn't just this is an off-the-shelf product that can be hugely modified at the point of implementation, or we have a course builder, which is the authoring tool to edit the course and all of our courses if a customer wanted to take that on board as well. So we can make the changes as Ideagen, or the customer can take on the course builder functionality and make those changes. And the course builder is really useful if they're having a series of policy changes and they want to make just minor tweaks quite frequently, because it saves having to come back to the supplier each time you want to make an edit. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers the question quite comprehensively.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you're teaching somebody how they should be setting up. We give them the information so they know how to use their equipment, and therefore they should be able to be responsible for setting up at any workstation that they choose to use. And I think it supports that. You've asked an interesting question. If somebody's home workstation proves to be totally unsuitable, can you legally tell them to come back to working in the office full time? Right, now, I'm not a lawyer. However, I'm picking that a little bit with my health and safety hat. It does depend where their place of work is. But if they were, if they initially were in the office and they've been working at home, and you do a risk assessment of their workstation at home, and there are significant risks and you're unable to make changes, then yes, I think you have a duty to make sure they're not put at risk. So I think if you've done everything you can to try and make the workstation safe at home and you can't, then I think you almost have a duty to offer them a different work environment, which is probably in the office. So generally, yes, but as I say, I am not a lawyer, so you'll need to speak to HR on that. But I have advised many people that if they can't set up well at the home for the tasks that they do, then they should be looking at alternative places to work, which usually is in the office.
Yeah, and I can't add much more to that, Catherine. It is, not being a lawyer and saying yes or no to that question. That's the best practice in getting the person in the appropriate place to do the job that they're doing. So, yeah, I think that's as far as we can go with that particular question.
It is.
So we got another there.
Yes, we've got some advice for school teacher ergonomics. Yes, we do see quite a lot of teachers in schools. I'm not sure it's something that's specifically covered by the Agile course, is it, Ryan?
Not specifically, no.
But what I would say, the content, on the go, I think is probably very relevant for many school teachers because they are working between different classrooms. Mm-hmm. And certainly one could add content specific to the workstations within teaching environments. So I think, yes, I think we do cover teacher ergonomics, but one would perhaps need to modify it slightly to make sure that it was pertinent, relevant, and people felt that actually their issues were being addressed. So let me scroll on down. Have you seen any other ones?
I've got one here. So is there pregnant worker section? Not specifically in the Agile course, but the way we sort of facilitate a response to any pregnant workers is that we would ask a question in the self-assessment, and if it was answered in the positive, that the lady is pregnant, it would trigger an action for them to complete the new and expectant mothers course. So we keep it out of the Agile working course specifically, but that in answer to that question, that's how we would resolve that particular problem. And I've got a follow-on question to that as well, is if somebody selected everything, roughly how long do you think the course would take to complete? The reality is it's going to take around 40 to 45 minutes to do the whole content, all 3 different environments. But we would always suggest that you empower the end user to make the right decision and say, please complete your primary workstation first of all, and complete secondary and tertiary environments when you're working in when you're physically sat in that environment, because you then relate your responses and the training to where you're physically sat. So it would be effectively 40 to 45 minutes over a period of days, maybe weeks. So hopefully that answers that question as well.
Okay, this is one specifically for you. They've got somebody who's been an Assessrite customer previously and wants to know the steps to now becoming an Agile user. I presume the relatively simple, but probably the best thing is to reach out to you, isn't it?
Please. Yeah. I mean, it's the same WorkRite platform, so you'll be able to keep all of your training data for Assessrite. Agile DSE is simply a new course and with its own assessment configuration behind it as well. So that implementation process would need to go through a normal sort of sales cycle. But again, like I say, it's not creating from new, it's adding on to what you've already got. So yeah, just please reach out and our sales team will be able to take you through that.
And this probably also feeds in a little bit. We've got a question about how long are the assessment results kept for, and best practice for keeping such assessment detail.
Okay, that's me. So the length of your contract, so the entire time you are contracted, the customer is contracted with us as a user of the product, the assessment inputs, outputs, training data, the default is it remains there for the length of the contract. However, we have the ability to put in periods of time based on company policy if you want to have data deleted after X number of days, X number of years for an individual. So in answer to the question, it's configurable, but it would default to the length of the term of the contract.
Okay, got an interesting question here from David. Have we done any research to show the outcome compared to having a face-to-face assessment? Can I take that to start with?
Yeah.
I don't think one could say we've done any sort of publishable research. And I think we have to draw quite a strict distinction between a DSE compliant assessment, so checking all the relevant elements and identifying if there's a problem, and an assessment that's done if somebody has a problem. What I would say is if we're doing a compliant assessment to make sure that we check all the elements that are required by the regulations, all the basic elements, I think you would find actually there was very good correlation between the results of a self-assessment and a DSE assessor doing it. However, if you come to look at a more complex, if somebody has a problem, then I'm afraid I would very much say that I think an in-person external assessor helping that person has got to be the way to go. This is not a replacement for somebody who has a problem with their workstation. This identifies that there is a problem and we need to spend some time on it. I mean, do you think that's fair, Brian?
Yeah, I wouldn't have much more to add to that. I think that's completely fair. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's flagging where the resource needs to be rather than, spreading an expensive resource all over and not focusing it in the right place. So I'm afraid having a DSE assessor is always best as far as I'm concerned, but to gather the data to know where to put that resource is where these packages really, really come into it.
Yeah, this type of package enables you to have maybe a smaller DSE specific resource, because like you say, you're prioritized, you're able to see the people that need that attention sooner because they're triggering actions. But yeah, that would be the only thing I could add to that.
Fine. I'm just having a look. I think that was all the questions on the Q&A. I'm just having a look to see if there's anything I've missed in the chat.
I've been checking the chat, Catherine. So we've got
oh, I've got a lovely one here. What would be best way to deal with uncooperative members of staff?
Ooh.
Gosh, now that's an interesting one. I mean, one thing I would say about these automated systems is, of course, you get several reminders, don't you? And you have an audit trail of the reminders. So if people are just saying, oh, I can't be bothered to do this, you've actually got a record that you've asked them several times. So maybe, I don't know if that's what that person was meaning.
Yeah, I would have gone down the same route to respond to that question, Catherine, as well. I mean, you can. Oh, I'm going to throw in some cliches here, but you can lead a horse to water. But equally, you can invite the person to do training and assessment that's going to help them, that makes you compliant as an employer. You can remind them. You can keep reminding them that audit record of asking them, and however you put that wording together, that audit trail provides you some sort of comfort that you've done what you can to help that particular end user. But yeah, you can't make everybody do training that they don't want to do.
But the one thing, as I said, I think earlier, is the fact that because this course is always available, so if you have somebody who doesn't want to engage, one would hope that if they actually felt discomfort or they had any concerns, they could quietly go on and do the course without losing face. So actually having it there as a resource, I think, is actually quite useful as well. It's DSE. People go, how dangerous can a computer be? But yet when it hurts, it really does hurt. They realize the value of it. I've got one little quick one here that they were asking if we offer DSE assessor training. We certainly do. Posturite, I do training and my colleagues do too. So yes, training is offered, if that was your question. Did you see that question from Vanessa there about can people just click through, or does each page stay up for a while so they have to take it in?
We don't have time click through, so an individual could, I mean, technically click through the pages relatively quickly, but this is where the test comes in. I mean, if you have a I mean, personally, I'm the product manager. I find it would be upsetting if somebody went through the content and didn't consume it and enjoy it and put it on their bedroom wall. But if the individual has the knowledge and wants to get to the test, as long as they pass the test, they're effectively competent at doing their self-assessment. So there's that argument from that side there. That's why the test element is included. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers the question. You can click through. The reason why we don't have a period of time for to pause for a click through is we've found on research that people reading at different speeds can get more frustrated with the fact they can't move on when they're ready to, than by people that aren't going to consume the information anyway. So that's the reason why we don't have a period of time where you have to be on each individual page.
I also think that, you know, sometimes people are just looking for a bit of information, and maybe they need to click through because they know roughly where it is. So sometimes that can be helpful. Got a question here about height adjustable desks. So again, I'll take that. What's my advice on height adjustable desks, particularly in an office that's being set up? I mean, I love height adjustable desks. I've had one for a long time, but I would say, you know, let's think about how somebody works. If somebody is pretty much desk-based all the time, then a height adjustable desk is probably going to be a really good asset. But if somebody's fairly flexible about where they're working, and I do think with these new environments we're seeing with soft seating and with movement, it may not always be necessary. And again, we all need to make sure that our resources are put in the right place. So yes, wouldn't it be lovely to have height adjustable desks everywhere? You could accommodate different people's heights and that sort of thing, and sit stand working. But sometimes we need to look at the high risk areas and make sure that they've got the tools there first. So yes, it'd be great to have it, but sometimes we need to look at the tasks whilst making those funding decisions. So that's my take on it. I don't know whether, Ryan, you've worked with us for years, whether you've got anything to add to that.
No, I think you've covered everything more comprehensively than I would there, Catherine.
Okay. Oh, look, how much does it cost there, Ryan?
Wow. Okay. In my previous guys, Catherine, you remember me being responsible for the commercial side of things. I used to be saying, don't give out prices, but it's illogical. Okay. An annual fee for around 100 users of DSE, Agile DSE, would be around £12 a head. And that drops all the way down to somewhere below sort of £8 a head if you're getting into 1,000 and beyond their economy of scales. But do reach out to us if you've got a combination of courses, or you just want to understand how the course could work for you, because it's always something that is I'm not going to use the negotiable word, but it's of course we want to find a price point that is appropriate, but they're the price points we're starting at is £12 and £8 for 100 and 1,000 users.
Okay. I think probably we might have to say this is the last question, but Diana says, how can you facilitate that training records links with the individual's organizational training records for evidence compliance?
Oh, wow.
Ooh,
that's a chunky one to finish on, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, that's an integration question. So if you've got an internal learning management system or a training record that you're using internally, you need to make sure they're linking up to the individual. We offer a flat file export integration that can pass back information to a third-party LMS. We've got integrations for getting users into WorkRite as well, and also user management. So yeah, we can feed back specific data to a third-party LMS with some integration options that we have as well.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Ryan, and it's good to have you back in the office.
It's
not sure we're going to lock the door and not eat and leave, but anyway, that's beside the point. So thank you. I'll catch up with you later. But I just want to remind people that you will get a copy of the recording this afternoon. And I hope you find that useful. Please feel free to reach out to us at Posturite or to Ryan too if you've got any further questions. And I suppose just to say, I'd love to see you. We're doing another webinar on the 7th of June, Tuesday the 7th of June, called One Less Task, Outsourcing the Management of Your Workstation Assessments. So that might be interesting to some of you if you're looking at ongoing management of your workstation assessments. So I'm going to leave you to say and have a lovely afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. So
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Catherine, as
thank
well.
you,
Thank you,
Ryan.
Posturite.
All right then. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.